this liquid in a bottle has them beat. No matter how hard or how many times they try, no matter how many people try and help them, no matter how much they want to stop, no matter how hard they try to stop, no matter how much their family wants them to stop, no matter how much people try and help them, they just cannot beat whether it's a liquid in a bottle that you buy at a grocery store or a liquor store, or a pill that comes in a bottle that's this big.
Hello, my name is Danny, and welcome to the Beyond the Window podcast for Ventana treatment programs. My name is Danny, and I'm an addict. My role here as a case manager and group facilitator, and it is an honor to be sharing this stage with my wonderful colleague, Shawn. Shawn, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name's Shawn Deffenbaugh. I'm in personal recovery. I've been in addiction recovery. I've been clean and sober for a little over 12 years now. I've been working in the field here at Ventana for a little over 11 years, and I've actually been working as a certified counselor for the last 4 years.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shawn. First of all, it's an honor to have you here. You've been a great source of inspiration and hope for me when I was getting clean. And so thank you for your service, and it's a privilege to be here with you.
Always an honor.
So maybe we can begin by, maybe some of our listeners might be family members or people who are contemplating about what is recovery and what does this recovery process look like. So I was wondering, maybe we can spend some time maybe introducing and walking through some of the recovery process or the 12-step process with some of our viewers. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Okay, so I'm new in recovery, and I keep hearing about this bottom talk, and it's very confusing for me. What do people mean, like, when you say you have to hit bottom first? Like what does bottom actually look like to you, and why do you think some people don't hit their bottom?
So I think everyone's bottom is different. I think it's unique to each and every individual. I like to say that the bottom is when you stop digging. I remember, my drug and alcohol use took me pretty far down the scale. As they say, I ran myself into the ground for a very long time. And I remember, like, one of the first times that I got into legal trouble and, like, having a court date and, like, going to court and, like, being afraid that I was going to get thrown in a jail cell and have to do some jail time. And that being, like, the end of the world. Like, that being, like, I can't even contemplate how horrible this is. I can't even imagine, like, how bad this is going to be. I'm so scared. I can't. It's beyond my imagination. Just terrified, miserable. Couldn't even understand how things had gotten so bad for me. But that was actually very early on in my addiction. And little did I know that going to jail was only the very beginning. And it got worse. And then after that, it got worse. And then after that, it got worse. And there were things that were much more horrendous than just doing a little bit of time in the county jail. So for me, there's always a worse bottom out there waiting for me. I'm certain that, if I were to make one bad decision today and think that maybe I would like to experiment with one of these, new substances that is out there nowadays, or maybe pick up a drink because I think that, I'm not an alcoholic or an addict anymore, that there will eventually be an even deeper bottom out there waiting for me somewhere that is beyond, anything that my imagination could ever come up with.
Yeah. What a story of resiliency. Thank you for opening up about what your bottom was like. I can see how difficult it must have been, experiencing homelessness or physical arrests. And, it's overall crisis, right? But it's like, I remember when I was first showing up to the rooms, and I had a really hard time identifying with others, because it's like, well, what if I've never been arrested? What if I've never been homeless before? Have I reached my bottom yet? I don't know. And I like the emphasis you placed on, like, bottom is when you make a decision to put the shovel down and to stop digging.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting, of all of the, physical and mental and psychological, consequences that I had to suffer as a result of my substance use, there was no bottom that was worse than the emotional one that came, how it affected my relationship with my family. And once I experienced that, there was nothing that even had come close to it, regardless of how many times I had been, arrested or thrown in jail or prison or whatever it might have been. Like, nothing compared to that darkness that I felt inside my soul when I saw how it was affecting my relationship with the people that I love most in this world.
Yeah. I appreciate you bringing in that emotional aspect to it, like, because some of us may still have a career, some of us may still have a home, a vehicle, some of us may still have family support, so maybe everything on the outside may look stable, but the internal, the emotional part, maybe I've hit bottom there, right? And that can manifest as feelings of hopelessness, despair, fear, anxiety, suicidal ideations.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't have to lose everything on the outside to hit bottom. Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I believe that, and again, like I'm a firm believer that this is unique to the individual and their personality and their circumstances and their lived experience. Whatever brings someone to the level of willingness, usually it's desperation. So whatever it takes to get you to a point where you become willing to do something that, for someone like me, for example, when I was introduced to the 12-step program, all of the suggestions, if you will, that are in the 12 steps that were introduced to me, I just could not figure out or foresee or understand how those things could help me stay clean, stay sober. One of the main things, for me was the spiritual aspect of the program, which was something that I was very close-minded to in the beginning. So I had to hit a very deep and dark bottom in order for me to find the level of desperation that brought me to the level of willingness to do something that I had absolutely no faith in whatsoever. I mean, I know that we talk about surrender a lot, and like when you're talking about hitting bottom and that level of desperation and the willingness and the surrender, and like what that actually looked like for me was like, you're fighting a war, right? And you're fighting this battle against this enemy that's trying to kill you. Like in my case, it was my addictions trying to kill me. And so when you surrender, like you're going to keep fighting or you're going to surrender. And like when you surrender in a battle, like you're not surrendering to your friend, you're surrendering to the enemy. You're putting your life in the hands of the people that are trying to kill you. So like there's a level of desperation that's associated with that. So like that's what I had to do. Like surrender for me, like when I became willing to accept help, I had lots of ideas of how I thought I should be helped, how people should help me. Like I'm willing to accept help, but I think it should be this way. And so that's one level of willingness, but there's levels of willingness that go deeper than that. And so for me, like I had to become willing to, accept a different type of help, because if it were up to me, I would say, okay, I'll accept your help. Give me a place to live. Let me borrow your car. Get me a cool job. Let me save up for some money. I need to meet a nice girl, like all these things that I need in my life in order for me to have a chance at recovering. And, to my dismay, I learned that I had to first enlarge upon my spiritual life and then in time allow everything to kind of fall in place in their own time after that.
Yeah. I think you bring up a lot of important concepts like surrender, right? And my understanding of surrender was distorted because I used to believe that surrender was a sign of weakness, right? That surrender meant to give up. And what I've learned was that, I had no issues surrendering because many, many times I've always surrendered to the substances. I had a level of willingness, like I was willing to do anything to get loaded, anything. If you asked me to wake up and go to the liquor store at 6 or 7 in the morning, as soon as they open up, I'd be there. Or if you asked me to pick up that phone and drive 100 miles to go pick up a substance, I'd be there. If I needed to stand at a corner for 2 hours just to wait for my drug dealer to show up, I'd be there. I had that level of willingness. I've surrendered to the drugs many, many, many times, right? Because drugs were my higher power in active addiction.
Yeah.
Right.
I relate to that a lot.
And so coming into recovery, taking and transferring that same level of willingness and surrender away from the substances and towards recovery was difficult for me, right? It was difficult because I wasn't ready to get honest that I've hit bottom yet, right? I feel like it requires a deep level of honesty and humility to say, yes, I'm an alcoholic. Yes, I'm an addict, and I am powerless. Why do you think so many people early in recovery struggle with that admission of saying, yes, I have a problem, but I'm not ready to verbalize it or admit it yet?
Yeah, I think early on, in like, let's say the recovery process, for people that, have been successful in all other walks of life, there's nothing else that I know of that is like addiction on this planet. So like, we meet people who have decorated, military careers, people that have, master's degrees, doctorates, have been successful in business, in family, in society, all other walks of life. Not only have they been successful, but they've overcome adversity when faced with it every single time. Like people have, passed the bar and gone on to become lawyers and, walked through, family tragedies, deaths in their families, physical ailments, all of these things that, they've faced and overcome in life. But yet somehow, some way, this liquid in a bottle has them beat. No matter how hard or how many times they try, no matter how many people try and help them, no matter how much they want to stop, no matter how hard they try to stop, no matter how much their family wants them to help, wants them to stop, no matter how much people try and help them, they just cannot beat whether it's a liquid in a bottle that you buy at a grocery store or a liquor store or a pill that comes in a bottle that's this big. How is it that something so small, so simple, so basic has me beat when I've overcome all these other things in life? I mean, it's a hard pill to swallow, if you'll pardon the pun.
Yeah, it definitely is difficult. I think about like how painful it is for my ego to make that admission, right? Because I have been successful in many areas of my life. I do have a lot of skills, but when it comes to substances, self-will isn't just enough.
Yeah. On the surface, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. It's like I can manage well on all other areas of my life, but when it comes to substances, why? Why can't I? And so I create all these like I use all these defense mechanisms, right? Like I rationalize, I justify, I deny, I minimize, and all these defense mechanisms, I use them because I'm afraid of being honest. And all these defense mechanisms keep me in denial, right?
Yeah, which brings us to step one, right? The admitting to yourself and to at least one other person that you have a problem that you can't handle on your own, that you need help with. And a lot of it.
Yeah. And it's interesting how like everyone around my life was trying to tell me the truth, right? My family, my partners, my coworkers, my friends. I was constantly being told the truth. I think you have a problem. I think you have a problem. I think you should get some help. But it was so difficult for me to accept it because I was too prideful. My ego, I wanted to protect it so much. And I would rely on these defense mechanisms. It kept me in denial, right? And that kept me further away from hitting my bottom. But until I was able to get honest and say, you know what? I can't control this thing. When it comes to substances, control is an illusion, and I truly am powerless. And then the gift of desperation that you mentioned earlier comes into fruition, right?
Yeah. For 20 years, I tried to figure out how to manage recreational substance use in my life. And you'd think that after 20 days, I would have gotten the point, being like, this isn't working. I can't do this. I don't stand a chance against this. But, instead of 20 days, I did it for 20 years. And finally, got that gift of desperation and found that willingness and was able to be in a position to capitalize on it and was able to find the ability to surrender at the same time where there was people that not only wanted to help, but were able to help.
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like we're at a point in our discussion where it's like, okay, we've realized we're powerless, we're honest about our addiction, and we can't control this thing. Now what? What's next? And I don't know if you can relate to this, but it's like, I remember when I was first getting clean, I thought abstinence was enough. I can just be dry and that's it. Fine, I can get honest. I have an issue with substances and I'm just not going to use ever again. And I got this. I don't need 12 steps. I don't need a sponsor. I don't need to go to 12-step meetings. I don't need any of this. I've made a decision to stop using and I got this.
Which is a formula which would probably work well for anything else in life aside from addiction.
Yeah.
But since addiction is unlike anything else in life, that doesn't work. Why just don't use doesn't work. I mean, if you're on paper, it sounds great. Like drugs and alcohol are affecting my life in such a way that I can't function anymore. I'm completely miserable. So take the drugs and the alcohol out of the equation and that equals a good life. Simple, right? But anyone that has the disease of addiction that suffers from it, that has tried that, knows that it's not that simple.
Yeah. And I feel like earlier you mentioned the whole spirituality component of it, right? It's like abstinence is not enough because, all right, so you take the booze and the drugs away, but I'm still having to address my spiritual malady. I'm still walking around life with resentments. I'm still walking around with self-centeredness, selfishness, right? I'm still walking around with character defects, and I don't have a program to address any of these underlying issues because they say that the bottle is just a symptom of something deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, you've probably heard it. You take the alcohol away from an alcoholic and what are you left with? The ick. Yeah. And I mean, I found that to be true for myself. And what I've learned over the years is that, the drugs and the alcohol, they weren't my problem. They were actually my solution. My problem was me. And when your problem is you, what's the obvious answer? Self-destruction, right? So I lived that way and I existed in that for a long time and couldn't see the forest for the trees because I was so embedded in that I was clueless as to, who I was or what I was doing or what was happening. And it was, why is my life so terrible? Why can't I stop? Why am I so miserable? Why can't I, why doesn't anything ever work out for me? And, I felt like I needed to put something in my body to change the way I feel. I needed it to happen quickly. I needed it to be strong. I needed it to be readily available, whenever I needed it, which was multiple times a day. And I needed it to change the way that I saw the world because the way that I saw the world was not healthy. I'm someone that believed that the world was a really, really messed up place and that it wasn't fair that I had to find a way to exist in it. And I thought that this planet looked better through the bottom of a beer mug or through a cloud of smoke. And, that was my reality for a very long time. And, I know that it sounds like we're getting into the next step, which is like step 2. Like we've admitted the powerless, we've found that level of willingness. We're at that point of desperation. We're at the jumping off point. And step 2, being open-minded. And we have to have that open-mindedness to, okay, there's something that can help me. There's a group of people. There's a higher power, if you will. There's a form of spirituality. There's another way of life that I can step into that can, I can step into out of all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Step 2 came to believe that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. Right. As I mentioned earlier, drugs were my higher power for a very, very long time. Right. And through that relationship, I realized that power is a very destructive one. And so I needed to find one that was loving and caring and supportive, right? But it's like, maybe some of our listeners don't believe in God. And so it's like, how do I navigate step 2? But I don't believe in God. I feel stuck. And here's the beauty about 12 step is that we get to cultivate a higher power of our own understanding. And I'm so, so grateful for my sponsor for giving me suggestions, like you mentioned as well, like making the group, right? You can break down the word God into an acronym, GOD, like the group of drunks, the group of drug addicts.
Good orderly direction.
I can rely on this group of drunks to receive good orderly direction so that I can experience the gift of desperation and receive grace offered daily, right?
Yeah, for me, it was open-mindedness. And I had a similar experience to where my sponsor was just like, I let him know, I'm like, hey, because I'm someone who had been a black belt agnostic from the time that I was old enough to think for myself. So, to my chagrin, I heard the G word a lot, heard people talk about higher power and spirituality, and I was convinced that it wasn't going to work for me. And I told my sponsor that. I'm like, I'm going to do everything that you guys tell me to do, exactly the way that you guys tell me to do it, so that when it doesn't work, I can be relieved of that responsibility.
Yeah.
Say, it's not my fault that it didn't work.
Yeah, it's your guys' fault.
Yeah. It's not my fault your guys' stuff doesn't work. And it wasn't even that I didn't believe that it didn't work, because I had enough exposure to people in recovery, having been living in residential treatment for between 30 and 60 days when I started becoming introduced to all this stuff, that I knew that it worked for other people. I knew that it was absolutely working for other people. Didn't know why. I didn't understand why. But I did not believe that it would work for me because it was too religious sounding. Because I didn't understand how all the consequences that, I talked about before, like the being estranged from my family, the being without housing, the not being able to find a job, the not having money, the getting arrested, getting in trouble, going to jail, all these things. Like, you think that something like, again, on paper, like that should be enough to help you stop that behavior that's, perpetuating all of that. But if that stuff didn't work, like, I believed in jail because I had been there over a dozen times. Like, I knew that jail existed, and I knew that that was waiting for me if I should decide to, go back into become active in substance use again. But I didn't believe in God. So if something that I absolutely 100% knew existed and believed in didn't work, how was something that I did not believe in going to work? And that's where the open-mindedness came in. And that's where the gentleness of my sponsor came in, and just like, do you think you could practice being open-minded? Do you think that you have a chance at someday getting better? Can you open your mind to receiving help from something that you don't understand?
Yeah.
And thank goodness I was able to do that, because I believe if I hadn't been, and I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
Yeah.
Today.
I can relate to your story so much too. As an agnostic, at some point I was agnostic, right? I needed evidence of this God. I needed evidence of this higher power. And I had to turn towards the people, right? And there's the evidence. I'm a newcomer, and I show up to a meeting, and there's hundreds, thousands of other alcoholics, addicts who are radiating hope, love, thriving at life. There's my evidence. And I can see the program working for hundreds of other people. So why can't it work for me?
Yeah. And we discover it's not just about, that's where I discovered that it wasn't just about abstinence. It wasn't just about not getting arrested anymore. It wasn't about not going to jail anymore. It was about actually, like, being happy and being successful and, like, experiencing freedom and all these ways that, my definition of freedom was not being in a jail cell, And since then, like, I've learned there are many other definitions of freedom that you get to experience and learn and grow into along the way that are, for me, I didn't have the ability to imagine what recovery was like. The best I could come up with was getting off parole, getting off probation, not getting arrested anymore, not using drugs anymore, not drinking anymore, not just doing the same, behaviors that would cause me these dire consequences over and over and over again. And that was the most that my imagination could come up with at the time. But being able to step into recovery and be open-minded, and then moving into, the next part, which would be faith, and stepping into that and having faith that, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to keep doing this anyway to see what happens, because anything that's going to happen is probably going to be better than where I came from before.
Yeah, it's like looking at all the old timers was a vision of hope for me, right? As I continue going to meetings, that hope eventually evolves into faith. I see hundreds of alcoholics and addicts have this spiritual awakening as a result of working these steps, right? That can turn into faith. Even though I don't believe in it, I still do it anyway. That's an act of faith, is still doing it and staying out of the results. You know what? I don't know if I 100% believe it, but I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to take an act of faith and stay out of the results and find out, like, how can my life shift as a result of working these steps? Can I have a spiritual awakening? I don't know, but let's find out.
Yeah.
Because I'm so desperate. And I don't want, like you mentioned, the rest. I don't want to feel hopeless anymore. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I want something different.
Yeah. Yeah, and like the natural progression, like into step 3, like for me was, the next thing my sponsor suggested, asked me to practice doing was, again, I was fully honest with him about my belief system or lack thereof, if you will. And he asked me, do you think that you could practice? When we got to step 3, we read out of the book and we read the literature, and he said, do you think that you can practice praying? And obviously I could, right? Did I want to? No. Did I think it would work? Absolutely not. But could I? Could I practice praying? Yes, I can do that. And I found that when I did, something happened. Something unexpected happened. And I believe that that actually kept me open-minded long enough to receive that full-on spiritual experience that you're talking about a little bit later down the road, which changed everything for me. I mean, it was not what I was looking for. It was not what I was expecting. It was the last thing I expected, but I found it to be, more profound and important and relevant than any psychological experience that I had had on any mind-altering substance ever in my life. And I've held on to it, to this day, and it remains a part of my recovery, and I'm sure it always will be. And I believe that that's another thing that's different for everyone. And I'm careful about describing my spiritual experience because I did have what they call a white light experience.
Same.
Where it was a very profound, very, really almost overwhelming spiritual experience that I had that changed absolutely everything for me. And I know that not everyone gets that. And it's different for everyone. And I'm a firm believer that we get what we need when we do what we're supposed to do. Yeah. And I believe that I had that profound of a spiritual experience because it's what I needed in order to have a chance at recovering.
Yeah, same here, Shawn. I'll never forget the day that I made contact with something greater than myself. And interestingly enough, it came as a direct result of praying, right? And it's a long story too, but I did have my white light experience, and I'll just quickly go through it. What started it was I was so deep in my addiction that, being agnostic and confused about this higher power, I said, you know what? Let's give it a shot. I got on my knees and I said, God, if you really exist, please help me. I am scared for my life and I don't know what to do. If you're real, please show me. And he did. A miracle happened. Long story short, he put me in a position of having this experience with this precious little animal, and I saved that little animal's life. And I felt a presence flow through my body, this energy that I haven't felt in a very, very long time. And I would love to describe that presence as compassion, love, unity. As I was rescuing this precious little animal's life, I felt love flowing through all parts of my body. And I have not felt love or compassion for anything in a very long time, especially when I was using. But for some reason, the moment that I opened my heart and my mind to something greater than myself, he put me in a position of rescuing this precious animal's life. And I carry that memory with me. I carry it with me. And I had to give it meaning. Like, what did it mean? Why did that happen to me? And now I understand, I believe that through that experience, not only was I rescuing that animal, but so was my higher power rescuing me. Right? I had no idea that the rooms existed of recovery. No idea. But what are the odds that as a result of me praying and opening my heart and mind to something, a miracle happens and I'm introduced to the rooms? And now I had a little bit of open-mindedness towards that power. And now I'm in a room with hundreds and thousands of other believers that believe in something bigger. And I said, oh my God, I have arrived. I'm not alone.
Yeah. And the parallels of my story and yours, I don't think you've ever shared that. We've known each other for a long time. Yeah. And, we've been a part of each other's recovery journey for years. And I don't know if I've ever shared my spiritual experience with you. I don't think you've ever shared that with me before, but the parallels are so incredible because what you described was what happened in my step 3 experience. Like I practiced praying just like my sponsor suggested that I did. And, for a second, kind of half expected, Jesus to come walking down the stairs or the lights to flicker or, like something to happen because at the time, I was the center of my own universe. And I was so important in my own mind that if there was a God, he was going to show himself to me because I had demanded it of him. And so when nothing happened, I went back to reading the book that I was reading. And the book that I was reading was Robinson Crusoe. And the very next line in the book, Robinson Crusoe is marooned on a desert island. He's been there by himself for years, and a chest washes up on the shore. And the very next line in the book is the chest washes up. He opens it. Inside the chest, if anyone knows the story, there's a Bible, and he picks up the Bible, and the line that he reads out of the Bible is, "Call on me in your time of trouble, and I will be there, and you will glorify me." And that was what I got, and that was enough for me to believe that something happened. I didn't know what it was. Was God talking to me? Was the universe talking to me? Was it a coincidence? I didn't know, but it kept me open long enough for me to have my own very profound spiritual experience. A few weeks later, after doing my 4th and my 5th step, which again is probably not a coincidence because we hear so many stories of people having these profound spiritual experiences after they complete their 5th step, their 4th and their 5th step. And, for me, it was just being so, ever since I was an adolescent, I was just so obsessed. I suffer from that obsession of constantly feeling like I had to have something to alter my perception of reality. There's no way I could exist in this world without putting something in my body to change the way I saw it. Like that was unthinkable. So the best that I could come up with was like, today, let me just get through today without relapsing. And then we'll fight this whole battle all over again tomorrow, And every day I laid my head down on the pillow at night and I hadn't relapsed. It was just like, I had won this major battle, in the war of life. And what happened was I was walking home from a meeting by myself when I was still in rehab. And I had passed this car accident where this family was trapped inside a minivan, and the ambulance was there and the fire department was there, and they were using the jaws of life to like try and extract this family that was stuck in this minivan that had gotten into this car accident. And on the way to the meeting, I walked right past that, and on the way back, the whole scene was gone. There was nothing left but like a news van interviewing a neighbor complaining about how he thought that there should be a stoplight there or something like that. And I remember thinking, I hope that family's okay. And it had been a very long time, similar to what you shared, that I had thought of anyone except for myself. And thought about anyone else's well-being, another creature on this planet's well-being aside from my own. And when I had that thought, the next thought that flooded into my mind was, I have the ability to try and help someone else that wants to get better. And I'm convinced that thought did not come from me. That thought came from somewhere else. And when I received that thought, that obsession that I had been a slave to since I was old enough, since I first became addicted all those years ago, it was gone just like that. And I knew at that moment that the war was over. And, I basically floated home The rest of that walk, I felt like I was levitating. For the first time in my life since I became addicted, I could imagine what life would be like without being a slave to substances, without constantly feeling like I have to put something in my body to change the way I feel, to change the way I think, to change the way I interact with other people, to change the way I view the world around me. And yeah, I mean, I knew when that happened that the process was working and I had to keep going forward, and I haven't let go of that. And I'm so grateful that I had that experience and that I've been able to hold on to it, because it continues to be one of the touchstones in my recovery journey to this day.
Yeah. Thank you, Shawn, for sharing your spiritual experience. It was lovely. And I loved how you continue to feed it by being more altruistic. And like you said, thinking less about myself and thinking more about others. How can I serve? How can I give back?
Yeah. And at that moment, just like you described, feeling connected for the first time in my life I felt a connection with every single other living being on this planet at the same time. And like, that's the best those words are the closest I can come to describing how not alone I felt walking home alone from that meeting that night. And I felt that way ever since. I was concerned that I might have been having some sort of brief epiphany or acid flashback. But when I woke up the next day and that obsession was still gone, and I still felt that connection with everyone and everything, on this planet, I knew that I had to keep going forward, and that there was more to learn and more growing to do and more to discover and more work to be done. So for me, being free of that obsession that I was plagued by for so many years, and being at least willing to try and be a useful person on this planet, they're inseparable.
Yeah. I feel like what we're describing is step 3, right? Like, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. All right, so we've admitted we're powerless and our lives are unmanageable. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Now we're at step 3. You had your spiritual experience. I had my spiritual experience. Then what do we do with it? What does turning my will over mean to you?
So, and again, I love how you brought up, like, you asked the question, like, what about people that don't believe in God? Like,
Yeah.
all this stuff that sounds, it sounds religious, right?
Yeah.
We use the G word, we say God, we say higher power. To me, it doesn't really matter what you call it, as long as I have it. That's all that matters to me. But I feel like it's easy for people to kind of get hung up on the nomenclature. And I do step 3 every day. There's a prayer involved with step 3. I say the serenity prayer. I say the step 3, the 3rd step prayer, and I say the 7th step prayer every day. And in all honesty, I haven't found it necessary to believe that there's someone or something on the other end of that prayer listening to me every single time I say it. For me, step 3 is the act of, when I say the serenity prayer, right? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That is an act, right? And I know one of the things that we kind of talked about a little bit about before was like making a decision and then action. Like, you make a decision to do something and then you follow it with the action. So like, I made a decision to not relapse many, many times over the years before I actually got into recovery. So there's making the decision, but I didn't take the action that was necessary to actually make that a reality for me.
Right.
So like, I can say step 3, I can, write something down, but when I take that act, when I say that prayer by myself, when no one else is looking every single day, I'm taking an action. And through that action, I'm acknowledging that I'm not in control of 99% of the things that happen on this planet, in this world, in my life. The only thing I'm really responsible for is how I react to what happens, which is the most important thing for me being an individual in recovery. So by saying these prayers every single day, me taking that action, it doesn't really matter where that's going or what's happening somewhere else in the universe. The most important thing that I can do is continue to take that action, and so doing acknowledge that I'm not in charge of this universe. Something else is. Something greater than me is in charge of what happens on this planet and in this world and in this universe.
I appreciate you talking about the action component when it comes to step 3, because I used to think that step 3 was just about praying for specific things and just sitting on the couch and hit my vape and do nothing about it. It's like, oh God, I want this job, or oh God, please give me this hot girlfriend or whatever, or oh God, I really want to like move out into my own place and have my own spot and yada yada yada. I was like this list of unrealistic things and just like treating God like if he's Santa Claus. And oh, I've been a good boy this year. I haven't relapsed. I haven't used. So please give me all these things.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to sit back and watch the miracles happen. Right? Like making a decision is implying action. Right? I have to put in effort towards rebuilding my life. Right? And so putting in the effort, doing the action, and staying out of the results, because sometimes life changes. Sometimes life throws curveballs at us, and I need to adjust my plans, right? And I may not always get the things that I'm striving for, and so I also have to learn how to adjust and to learn to live life on life's terms.
Yeah, prioritizing finding a way to be okay with what happens, regardless of what it is and when it is, allows me to live a life that doesn't necessitate putting something in my body to change the way I perceive the world around me on a constant basis. It allows me to be at peace as much as possible for a person like me with myself, the world around me, and everything that happens in it.
Yeah. So surrender is something that I have to practice daily, right? It's not just I worked step 3 and I'm done. I've surrendered and we're done.
Yeah.
Like life will throw many opportunities and challenges where we have to revisit that surrender.
Oh yeah. I tell people all the time, step 3 is a way of life.
Yeah.
For me.
My coworker just really pissed me off and disrespected me. Am I going to relapse on anger and aggression and disrespect?
Yeah.
Or will I choose to surrender and choose the principles of the program? I just found out my partner relapsed and I'm really upset. And I want to confront her with aggression or whatever it is. Am I going to relapse on destructive behaviors, or I have the option to surrender and use principles, right? All these challenges that life throws at us are opportunities to surrender.
Yeah. And for me, it's gotten easier with practice over the years. I've gotten better at it. It's started to come more naturally, and I don't have to think about it or force it in any way. Some things are easier to walk through than others, obviously. In 12 years, in 1 year, like we walk through a lot of stuff, right? I've walked through a lot of stuff sober, and I've felt a lot of emotions, and there's been a lot of things that have been very difficult. But I've noticed, generally speaking, over the years, it gets easier the more that I practice it. And it almost just becomes like second nature. I hardly even have to think about it anymore.
Do you feel comfortable opening up about something that was triggering or difficult for you, and surrender was the best option?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like on a day-to-day basis, it's almost like a way of life. Like I said, there's little things that happen to where like step 3 is a way of life. Like I can be, say I'm driving on the freeway to work, and like I need to be at work at 4:00, and I left with plenty of time to get there. I planned ahead, no fault of my own. There's really, really bad traffic today. And, I might end up being a little bit late if I don't maybe step on the gas, zip around some people, be a little reckless, whatever it might be. And there's people that are honking at each other. There's people that are cutting each other off. Maybe someone cut me off, and, like I can make a decision to like get caught up in that and try and force my way to work on time. Or I can make a phone call, be like, hey, there's a lot of traffic right now. Like I'm probably going to be a little bit late. But I mean, again, I'll repeat, the biggest example for me was like when I was much earlier in recovery, just the whole idea of I need help, which was as far as I could really take myself at the time. And I'm going to let you help me in any way. I need help so bad, and I'm so willing and desperate to get help that I'm going to trust that whatever you're going to be able to do for me is going to be better than what my previous way of life was able to do for me. So surrendering and being willing to accept not just my idea of help, of the help that I think I need, but the help that you think I need.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Shawn. Maybe we can transition to step 4 and 5, right? Making a moral inventory and then being honest with ourselves, another human being, and God about the exact natures of our wrongs. What was your experience like walking through those steps, especially after working that 5th step?
Yeah, and this is a point where I want to just kind of like give a shout out to residential treatment, as it exists, because it's just so helpful, because I am not someone, again, even after having that step 3 experience that made me much more open-minded than I had previously been, writing all this stuff down, doing all this work, I harmed a lot of people. I caused harm in my community. Just the idea of like making a list of, like, say, for example, the inventory of people that we've harmed was really overwhelming for me. I mean, resentments, can I even count that high? And all the resentments that I have towards other people and institutions, in this world, like really, really overwhelming. I believe that there's not a chance that I would have done it on my own accord. So the fact that I was in an institution that told me that this is what you have to do if you want to stay here and continue receiving our help was exactly what I needed. If I didn't have that boundary set for me, I would have never done it, because I didn't want to, because of the fear, and because of the disbelief that something like that could help me, because I didn't understand how that had anything to do with my drug and alcohol use. So being kind of mandated to do that, faced with the choice of doing that or going back to where I came from, was the only thing that saved me from backing out. And so just like all of the other steps that we talked about, like actually taking the action, and then the rewards come and you learn, like, wow, this is working. Like, this is actually really helping me way more than I could have ever even imagined, even not even understanding how at the time. Like, I don't understand how this is affecting me the way that it's affecting me, but I'm going to keep doing it because this is helping a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was working my 4th step, there was a lot of fear coming up, right? There was a lot of fear about looking at myself, and there was a lot of fear about getting honest about all the things that I've done,
Sure.
right? Because it's like I didn't have anybody to turn towards. Like, I've done a lot of messed up things that I am ashamed about, and I felt very guilty, and I had a lot of remorse.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for meeting my sponsor. Through that relationship, I was able to cultivate the courage to get honest about all of it. Because every time I tried to get honest with people, there was always like negative consequences. I couldn't get vulnerable with my family the same way that I've been with my sponsor, because the response were different, right? Like, if I'm honest about all the things that I've done in my past to my family, they might judge me or get hurt by it. If I am honest about all the things that I've done with my employers, there might be negative consequences of it, right? If I'm honest about everything that I've done to my girlfriend, she might get hurt from that truth. And so this is where a sponsor came. It was very useful, right? Because when I was finally able to be vulnerable and honest about everything, and I shared that with my sponsor, his response was one of acceptance, no judgment, unconditional support and love, and empathy. And that's what I needed at that time in my life.
I had a very similar, experience and response from my sponsor as well, which is, the same exactly what I needed. My sponsor was a we guy. So like whenever I put something out there that I felt like was, particularly abhorrent, like he would present, he would counter with, well, we as alcoholics, this is what we do when we're in these types of situations. Like, and I didn't feel alone. I felt very supported. And it really, really helped me to walk through that fear. And it was one of those things that once I started, I kind of felt the momentum that I was able to kind of carry me through the process, which took a while because there was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I've realized that, like, because I was withholding so much out of fear, I had all these secrets, and they were keeping me sick.
Yeah, I mean, it removed the ability for me to be in denial about who I was, at the time, which was, a very eye-opening experience for me. And there wasn't really anything that I feel like I could ever turn back from. Like once my eyes were opened to what kind of person I was, there was just no going back from that, and I knew I had to keep moving forward because once that was laid out, it's like, oh, this isn't good. We have a situation here. We got to do something about this, which obviously leads us into the next few steps, right? We're immediately into this is what you do about what we're looking at here.
What's really rad about secrets is that once I was able to get honest about all of them, they've turned into my greatest asset. Because now, when I'm at meetings, I can openly disclose. My secrets are not my greatest assets because guess what? There's probably somebody else in the room who's still holding on to those secrets and they're not ready to be honest about it.
Yeah.
But then they see us opening up about it at a meeting level and how we've addressed these secrets and healed from these secrets. All of a sudden, we're carrying the message to that person who's still suffering with theirs. And it's so beautiful.
Yeah. Who would have thought that the worst thing that I've ever been through would be the one thing that gives a hopeless person hope in this world? It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So what does a spiritual awakening mean to you?
Yeah, for me, it was definitely, not being alone. I touched on this a little bit, but I never could have imagined feeling not alone ever again for the rest of my life, regardless of whether I was by myself or whether I was in a room full of people. There's a lot of talk about anyone who knows anything about addiction recovery has heard the talk of connection and how important it is, the sense of community, whether it's a connection, feeling connected with yourself, right? Being in touch with yourself, knowing who you are, being okay with who you are, having a healthy relationship with yourself, having a healthy relationship with your coworkers, with your friends, with other people in recovery, and having that connection, like survivors of the same sinking ship, as they say. Being connected with people in your community, whether it's through church or through meetings or other types of support groups or, your work or whatever it might be. But that for me is like, it's the ultimate example of connection. Because as I said, like feeling as if you have, a direct connection to every other form of life on this planet at the same time. I mean, I don't, like I said, our friend Ty says they don't make dope this good. And like, I feel like that's applicable.
Yeah.
That hits the nail on the head.
Yeah. There's just such a deep level of freedom.
Yeah.
Right. Through these awakenings. Right. Maybe a sense of purpose, a connection with something greater, having a meaningful and purposeful life and carrying the message to the addict who still suffers. Right.
Yeah. To this day, I can go for a walk by myself and keep myself incredibly entertained by listening to the sounds of the forest or the meadow, looking at the clouds, watching the birds chirp around and interact with each other, watching a lizard, scurry through the leaves on the ground, listening to the sound, like sitting next to a creek for a little while and listening to the water flow over the rocks and just be in heaven on earth.
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful gift.
The here and the now, right? That deep level of interconnectedness with all of life's manifestations. What a blessing.
Who would have thought? It was not what I was looking for when I went to rehab.
Right? I just wanted to stop using. That's it, man.
Yeah.
And recovery is something much more meaningful.
Yeah. They say you get what you put into it. I've gotten probably about 100,000 times what I put into it.
Absolutely. And I'll never forget that question my sponsor always asked me when I was white knuckling it or half-assing the steps. It's like, Danny, how free do you want to be? How free do you want to be? I want to be free.
Yeah. And we get to be.
Yeah. Thank you, Shawn. Why don't we close out with one final question, if that's okay with you?
Of course.
So, Shawn, maybe for someone who's listening and they feel stuck or resistant towards this whole 12-step process, what's one message that you hope they can take from this conversation?
I would say that if you are 100% against developing greater honesty and humility, accountability, serenity, connection, joy, and peace in your life, do not do the steps. Because I cannot think of a single person that I know of that's gone through this process and come out the other side without, gaining that into their life, like gaining those qualities, greater honesty, greater humility, greater accountability, greater peace and serenity and connection with the world around them, like we've been talking about in their lives. So if for whatever reason that's something that you are dead set against having in your life, don't do it, because I'm sure it'll happen with you if it's happened just as it's happened with everyone else.
Yeah. What a beautiful message, Shawn. It's been an honor having you here. Thank you for coming out
So
today.
thank you. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, brother. Thanks for watching Beyond the Window podcast at La Ventana Treatment Programs. You can check us out on YouTube and Spotify, and we'll see you in the next episode.